UDC.
My name is TJ. I'm the VP of Solutions Engineering at UDC, and I'm here with
Jenny Wolfe, Solutions Engineer at UDC.
we're going to take some time today to talk a little bit with you about helping you to calculate the ROI on your business transformation. What does that mean? Specifically today, we're going to talk a little bit about enterprise GIS. What is enterprise GIS? Why it's important to you. We're going to give you some specific examples of how you go about finding the value in your migration. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some customers that we've helped and how they were able to determine and find the ROI for themselves. We're going to have time at the end for questions. So if you have any, please hold them. Generally, I like to do a little bit more interactive, but we want to make sure we cover everything. So a little bit really quickly about UDC. We are a spatially focused systems integrator. We're a services provider. Primarily, we focus on utilities and in the federal space. We are a network management specialist. We have over 25 projects in the UN space and over 100 utility customers across the world. So if you want to talk more about that, always happy to do that. GIS has been around forever, right? It's a foundational system at most utilities. We've used it as the system of record for location. We've used it to provide information about the as-built state of the network, to create stunning maps and help people understand information about maps. And fundamentally, we've used it to enable GIS professionals to share data across the organization. That's the classic pattern. Next generation GIS is a tightly integrated part of the enterprise. It's a function of a system of systems. So instead of saying everything has to be in GIS, we're now leveraging patterns where you can access the data you need, where you need it, when you need it, through these new patterns. For example, instead of asset data, we're now talking about asset information. Information is data that's been processed, analyzed, and now provides value. Instead of maps and visualization, we're talking about providing people applications and analysis. It's the ability to get people the information they need that works for them when they need it, and they're able to do that themselves. We're moving away from a desktop architecture to something that's scalable, that's service-based. It's allowing architecture patterns that serve you in terms of deployment, serves you in how you use them, and it also enables a broader range of support. And finally, we're moving away from GIS being about location to GIS being about geospatial intelligence. It's not just about where things are. The power of GIS is about how things are related, how they're interconnected, the relationships and the patterns and analysis you can draw from that. That's what's going to make the material change in your organization.
Before we can really talk about ROI, we want to talk about what are some of the enterprise GIS drivers, right? So why do you need to, or why are you even considering it? So one of those things is that long-term technology roadmap. When you think about technology as far as it's concerned with utilities, a lot of that is challenging. You have a lot of constraints. There's a lot of decades of legacy IT systems. And those legacy IT systems don't necessarily have the infrastructure to support the evolving utility needs that there are out there. So as far as modern tech dependencies, a lot of the more improved modern technology that is available, the systems demand more sophisticated technology infrastructure due to regulatory and social pressures. Enterprise GIS plays a key role, especially in gas and electric utilities. When it comes down to compliance, feds and states increase those regulations. For example, gas transmission TVC, we're looking at 250,000 to 2.5 million per infraction. And then on the electric side, especially California POC, you've got 20,000 per geofailure. So modern technologies now rely on that geospatial information. Specifically is when we're talking about utilities, examples of that include SCADA, your meter and metering reading, your AMI, the EV charging. So on with that, you have the information accessibility. So many large utilities have a lot of data, and a lot of them don't use a large percentage of that data because they don't know how they can share it, how they can analyze it. So with all of those data acquisitions, they need to figure out, well, how can I use modern technology? How can I evolve and sharing that information across the company? We want to reduce those information silos. How many of you have a lot of information, but it's either in basements, in cabinets, you have them in geodatabases across your company, or worse yet, they're in people's heads. So how can you get that information across? And then finally, one of those drivers could be aligning IT with business. A lot of the times, the Enterprise GIS initiative is done by IT. The best way to look at that is how can we bring business into that decision? Bringing them into the driver's seat so then they can make those decisions that align with the company strategies, the operations, and so forth. Other considerations, core versus custom. How many people have very highly customized solutions? So some of the reasons why you might want to consider core as opposed to custom is due to cost-effective measures. When you have highly customized software, that typically relies on development hours, which goes into coding hours, which goes into testing hours, and then you have to deal with having to do upgrades. Are you constrained by not being able to upgrade because of a version? Do you have just to do multiple patchwork fixes? So you may want to steer more towards core. You have established functionality, you have established workflows, you can do those upgrades, and then you also have community support, right? You are here. You have everybody using the same technology you are. You can hit Google and get 10 results. You can go into forums and share some of the challenges you have. Some other considerations are in-flight initiatives. Do you have other systems going through upgrades? Do you have other systems being implemented that could impact or be impacted by Enterprise GIS? As well as we just talked about data acquisition. Do you have other data acquisitions that could be brought in? You can share it, you can analyze it. And then finally, we have budget. Obviously, it comes down to, do you have the budget to implement this in one fell swoop? Are you going to do a phased approach? Do you have constraints with your budget? Do you have deadlines? Do you have deadlines that you have to spend that money? And that has to go into the considerations with when you would start that implementation. So as we get into some of the actual specifics of ROI, how do we measure quantitative metrics on ROI? You have qualitative, but sometimes it's better to have those quantitative metrics to determine what are the benefits versus the cost. So how do we tip this scale? So when you may start looking into this, obviously those implementation costs are going to be more heavily upfront, things like software maintenance, your hardware, software environments and installations, services, right? Services to embark on that implementation, your internal resources, and then data migration. All is going to be upfront costs. So the benefits you may not see in year one, you may not even see it in year 2 or 3, but as you progress, this is going to tip your scale so you can start to see those, is it working? There we go. Adding licensing costs. But on the other side with benefits, you're going to have some more labor productivity, right? With more licensing costs, that means you're going to have more folks using Enterprise GIS. They're able to access that information. You may have folks that are your inspections and survey that are able to look at the same data in the field as they are in the office. So having access to that information, more people using the data that is being either created or consumed in GIS.
Just the clicker.
As you progress, you'll see some more savings in OMF savings, capital deferment, material savings. So examples of that could be you have your, more and more you're seeing integrations with your graphic work design, right? And that ensures that a lot of those material savings you can see now. Additionally, ADMS optimization. That brings up to a total of 5 to 7% of injected energy annual savings every minute. Or every minute of SAIDI reduction is equal to about 500,000 of capital improvements to achieve the same reduction in SAIDI. So let's look at an example, tangible example that we have. So one of those is DIMP reporting. You might not know what DIMP is, but if you're in the gas world, DIMP is Distribution Integrity Management Program. And so this program is in place in natural gas distribution companies to understand the system design, the characteristics, the operating condition and environment, and the maintenance operating history. So sometimes in a current DIMP process, it can include a lot of manual processes. One of those can be in leak detection, right? You're going to be going in there, you're going to do manual buffering on your data. You're going to have to do some manual analysis, bringing in information from legacy spreadsheets and going through that. And that can ultimately take a lot of man hours. One example of a client that we worked with was 8+ hours for one person, just one, but then they would have to work with others who are familiar with their pipes, familiar with what could be causing those leaks. So that could be multiple people, 8+ hours a day just to create this one report. So by implementing a more automated solution, this was a way to not automate. It marries automated tools, but it doesn't change the manager's workflows that they already have in place. So it meant that you didn't have to introduce change management for additional software. This was just using what you had. And so you were able to, with this client, you were able to do leak detection with an automated tool. This ended up taking less than an hour for one person to do. So that was an 80% reduction in manual hours, which was also in cost savings. Additionally, this information could be passed down, saved up to a feature service, then it can be shared downstream. If you link that up with your tracking traceability and in the field and see the leak report, leak repair reports, this could exponentially be reduced in time as well for further reports. The final thing here with this is that they could then focus on exactly the areas or the pipe segments where they would have to make some repairs, which ultimately helped them figure out their yearly budget for where they were going to be spending their money on their condition and condition-based maintenance.
Okay, so the next example we want to talk about is the move towards core software. So, we all have custom applications. There's lots of reasons for that. Customization enables us to continue to do the work the way that we've always done it. It's comforting. It ensures that we know what's happening. There's a lot of value behind that. But with customization, as Jenny mentioned before, comes an impact to your upgrade cycles. So when I customize, it means I have to have extra time to develop, extra time to test, and that happens every release. And you guys know that release cycles are only getting shorter and shorter. So something that in the past I might be able to manage every 6 years is now coming every 2 years. So from a dollar standpoint, those dollars start to stack up really quickly. It also translates into technical debt. So one of the things we want to be sure that we're talking about when we're talking about calculating ROI or return on investment is, you guys know this, but we're going to say it anyway, it falls into two buckets. We have the soft value, which are the things that Jenny mentioned, which are qualitative, like things that make our jobs easier, that make us happier, things that make your customer's heart sing, right? Qualitative value, that's soft ROI. And then we have the things that are hard dollar, hard ROI, things that are actually going to save us time and money from resources. So technical debt is both of those things. And that's what happens when we customize. And finally, this translates into a longer and a larger long-term cost of ownership. Another really quick example, we're using small examples here because I think for a lot of us, small examples are how we're going to start to understand the transformational nature of these projects. So we have a customer who is currently in this pre-enterprise, has a extract that they're running. The extract is a batch extract that goes to a NAS drive that happens on a nightly basis to pull files that they need to send downstream to a leak survey vendor. It's fine, it works, but every time they upgrade, there's dollars that are involved. Small dollars right now, but there's licensing involved. Every cycle, so charts like this are really important, right? So the development is 120 hours a cycle. Testing is 40. Deployment is 20. That nets up. So if I'm doing this release every 2 years, that's a significant cost impact. When we talk about enterprise GIS, what changes? Every single step of the chart that I just showed you changes. Now I have a standardized pattern. Instead of having an extract, I'm able to publish a service. And now my vendor can access the service directly. That means that they own getting that data, managing that data. It means that there's a simplified support model because I'm supporting a service. I'm not supporting an extract and a NAS drive and the people getting the NAS drive and that batch process. Instead of 15 different steps in my process, I have one. It's an industry-aligned solution. Services are things that your vendors and other downstream people know how to leverage. It's not unique to you. It's not every time you're doing things differently. And finally, drastically lowers the cost of ownership. Because now when I'm developing, I don't have to redevelop that extract. I'm publishing a service. I'm testing, does the service, I still have to do those steps, but I'm dropping the order of magnitude by about 80%. So if you think about all the extracts that you have, all of the small little processes that you're onesie-twosying across your organization, this makes material change over the entirety of your enterprise. These are just two really quick, specific examples we thought would be helpful. I want to just take some time to touch on customer stories. When we talk about the transformation from where you're at now to enterprise GIS, we have a couple different ways to implement that transition. So we want to focus on 3 different deployment patterns for customers who've moved to the utility network. This is the first one we're going to talk about is a gradual transition. This is a gas and transmission utility of one of our customers. Again, we're not using names here, but if you have any questions about the specific use cases I'm talking about, please feel free to come and talk to me. I'll be happy to set you up with any one of these customers. So what were the goals and drivers for this customer? They're a really strong utility. They're really technical. They wanted to be able to manage their change effectively. Because they're really technical, they wanted to have a lot of time to explore the new technology. They wanted to be able to do it themselves. They were smart and they wanted to take care of most of it on their own. How would we know when we worked with them if they were a success? They wanted a functioning utility network model. They wanted to maintain their editing in their current geometric network desktop application. And they wanted to have a longer runway to understand the transition while keeping all of their data in compliance, which meant the ability to edit in their current system while pushing the data downstream. And they also had some constraints around cathodic protection due to their regulatory environment. They wanted to be able to model their cathodic protection a little differently. So what do? We took their existing GIS, we migrated it to 10.8, which gave them that longer runway. We moved their information into the utility network, built a functioning utility network for them, and made it into the system of engagement for everyone. So they were able to put all the data in services. People downstream were able to access those services while they maintained their current editing processes. So what did that get them? In terms of soft benefit, it gave them extensive ability to do change management because they had access to a system with the data in it. They have a highly customized current environment. It gave people exposure to that early. It also gave them the ability to train on their data in that environment. In terms of actual hard dollar benefits, when they do implement, it's going to be a shorter implementation time because they've already done 3/4 of the work. And it gave them a really defined scope for their next project. Many folks, when they get into this, aren't really sure what they need. This customer has a very clear scope for their next project. The next pattern I'm going to talk about is something we're calling network management sort of as a foundation for grid operations. This is a customer of ours who decided to move their electric transmission to the utility network for a couple reasons that we'll talk about. The goals for this customer were really around, they had a bunch, their electric transmission was stored in a bunch of different places. They wanted to move to really like a single network model, start to get rid of those siloed data entry, and then finally really get high quality data through some of the functionality that's provided in the utility network. How are we going to know that this project was a success? Well, they wanted to have all of the GIS functionality necessary to support their downstream network management, and they wanted to have a system that was scalable in the future. While their transmission network was really small, they wanted to build the framework and understand the architecture when they needed to implement distribution. So in terms of architecture and all of the patterns, this really gave them that preliminary insight. So how did we decide to achieve that? We actually spent a lot of time with this customer looking into their goals. So we didn't jump in and start doing things immediately. With a small conversion, we took a lot of time to understand what was driving it and get those really solid business requirements. And that ended up with a 3-phased approach for this organization that the conversion to utility networks was only the first step. What did they get out of that? Well, they got defined data goals. Data governance is something that we all struggle with across the industry. And so this really helped them take a step into that world. It gave them an authoritative network model that they finally were able to share across their enterprise instead of having the conversation that we all have all the time, which is, I think this is right, but I know you have something different. And then in terms of hard benefits, their editors were now working in a single system instead of multiple systems. And they had an ability to do more simplified integration patterns, again, because of the removal of those multiple systems. The last kind of pattern that I want to talk about, this is a multi-tiered energy company that actually went from paper to a full GIS in the UN and did everything. So this is like a full-scale implementation. So why did they do it? This is an organization that has many different arms. They have many companies across the United States and the world, and we're looking to start to establish patterns for how they might be able to work more effectively across those organizations. So they wanted to establish processes, and they want to streamline operations. You can imagine if there's 8 business units with 8 different GISs doing 8 different things, that's not cheap to support. How would we know that this project was a success? They wanted to, so remember this customer was not even on Esri, they were paper maps. So the first factor is Esri was implemented, we did that. The second thing is they wanted to have a template for how to implement the utility network and Esri at their other operating companies. So there are 2 main drivers. So how do we do that? We built a template. So we started with these non-GIS operating companies, which allowed us to kind of start from scratch with a clean plate. Say, this is best practice. We didn't have to fight any other because they didn't have any other practices. So it's a really clean way to say, in a perfect world, this is what it would look like and this is how we would do it. How did that benefit them? I'm just going to start by saying it benefited them because they had a GIS. They went from paper to GIS. I mean, that's better. It also gave them a standard technology approach. So it gave that organization the ability to look at the rest of their operating companies with a single lens. And it also, 3 different organizations with 3 different systems now had a single way of mapping, a single way of pulling data. That was, again, a lot easier to manage from a change perspective. And finally, this one is like, the hard benefits on this are really like silly because there were a million, right? But just like at a high level, they had the ability to have increased automation, reduce manual entry, going from paper to GIS, like not really a hard business case, but still a really clear pattern and something that I think is helpful when we start to think about. I think the presentation is done. I want to leave time for questions, but why I ended on this is I wanted to say, like, going from paper to a GIS is a massive transformation. But I think the way that we're going to find value in the transformation that we're all going through is thinking about the move from what you're doing now to the move to what you can do in enterprise GIS with that same transformational lens. So if you're willing to come to it with that same sense of curiosity and desire for change that you did when you moved from paper, I think you're going to be able to find a lot of really good business value.
UDC